Angela, welcome to Diana Prince.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I have to say, congrats on that badass name, Audaciously Angela. Is that the name of your business?
Yes, that's the name of my
Oh my
business.
God. I loved it. I
Oh,
loved it.
thank you. Thank you. It was
So before
that's confirmation.
before we jump into our conversation today, because we've got a few topics to cover, I would love to get a little bit about your backstory. What inspired you to start your business?
Well, I come of entrepreneurs. Doing a little bit of digging, I found out that, my great aunt was an entrepreneur. I had an uncle that was also an entrepreneur. But what really kickstarted it for me is I just had this longing to serve, that there was a bigger purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And back in 2009, I lost my job. And I had to kind of determine who Angela was without the corporate title, without all of the things. And it kind of forced me into a spiritual journey, but also to decide, like, what do I want to do? Like, what I want to do beyond what I was already doing. Like, who was Angela? And so I started on that journey, and it led me to the path of entrepreneurship, where I really want to give back, serve, help people heal, help people figure out what they want to do so they can live big, audacious lives.
Did you take some time off to figure it out? Did you purposely take some time off? Some people could just jump into the next job out of panic.
No. So I was laid off in 2009, and that was during the big recession that we had. And I was laid
Oh,
off for 3 years.
so it was 3 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I had 3 years of figuring out before I found another full-time job. So I was
Hmm.
doing small gigs here and there, things that didn't really light me up, but they paid the bills, right? So
Hmm.
during that time, I had a lot of time to think. So
Okay.
I wasn't able to jump. I actually didn't jump into a full-time gig until 2012. So I had a
Okay.
lot of time in between there to figure it out.
And you did, which is a good thing, because you can
Yes,
also
I
sit there
did.
and do nothing. So it's
Yeah.
you know, we have a lot of paths that we can take, right? And what you harness with that opportunities is something I can call it silver linings or whatever the case may be, but everything is an opportunity, right? And you have
Yes.
to harness it. So those
Yeah, I
three
was
years.
very lucky. I was very lucky during that time. All the mentors showed up. It's like when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. So
Mhm.
during that time, I had a lot of different people that showed up and showed me like the path, and or led me to a path, and they were there to help me like better understand myself. I was also brought to my knees, where I felt like faith was one of the things that I had to really depend on as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So you are a coach, and you use you have a metaphysical approach to the way you do your coaching. So we're going to, dive into some, lingo that you threw at me, because here's what I want to know. Here's what I want to know. You threw at me something that I've never heard of before. When we're talking about, our lives and balancing out, everything, you said something about spiritual hygiene. And I've never heard that term. And is that your specific term, like audaciously Angela, or?
No, that's not my term for it. And that gets everybody, right? So I have heard through the different healers that I've worked with, just spiritual hygiene, and just, I guess that's kind of like the circle that I roll with. So I'm used to the term, but it still stumps even some people in the spiritual community as well. But spiritual hygiene is basically taking care of your inner self. So we're all energy, right? And energy is all around us. Energy doesn't lie. So
Mhm.
one of the things that spiritual hygiene is important for me is that I'm very sensitive to energy. So I can walk into a room and tell what's been going on even before people have opened their mouths, or just looking around, just because of the energy, right? Interacting with people. So, and also I do energy healing. So you're also transferring energy and picking up their energy. So spiritual hygiene is, to me, is just like when you're taking a shower, you brush your teeth, all those things that we do to take care of our outer body, we have to do it to take care of our inner body and our energy level. So it's like I do things such as Reiki or energy clearing to clear that energy for me. Something as simple as taking a shower and having like coconut oil and putting sea salt in it and taking a salt bath. Something as
Mhm.
simple as that, and just wiping away the negative energy. It's like if you have a fight with your partner or your friend or something, that energy kind of stays on you. So you always have to take care of yourself and kind of like wash that energy away
Yeah.
from you. So that's
Yes.
very important, especially when you're working with other people, but just in our daily lives, when you're, when you're working with clients, when you're going to work and you're working with your boss, for those that, are corporate America or have a boss, things like that, even with your children, things like that. It's like just taking care of your mental and spiritual hygiene to clear it up. And that's what
Okay.
sage is for too. People use sage to clear themselves before they start energy work, or even to clear that after you work with energy work. So there's numbers of ways to like take care of your spiritual hygiene.
So in terms of the self-care that could, include a little bit of the spiritual hygiene piece, how do you incorporate self-care in your daily life?
So for me, in my daily life, sleep is a big one, right? Because a lot of us underestimate the power of sleep. So making sure that I get adequate amount of sleep. So that's one simple way. Another way for self-care for me is making sure I have my downtime.
Mhm.
I'm an introvert, and so I take on other people's energy as well. So I have to make sure that I have my downtime so that I can like re-energize myself. And whether that's like going out in nature, walking like barefoot in reconnecting to root myself, like walking in the grass. Water for me is a big way to self-care. So whether that's going to the beach, taking a shower, anything around water, that's another way to re-energize myself. I also look at self-care as having boundaries with yourself and having boundaries with other people. That's a big form of self-care. And for me, another big component for self-care for me was taking care of my finances. So we always think of some of us think of self-care as like manis, pedis, massages. That's great. And that's part of my toolkit. But I also, self-care is like making sure that all my, T's are crossed and my I's are dotted. So like last year, I think it was last year or the year before, I spent like 2 years just getting my finances together, really understanding my numbers and things like that. And that was a big catapult for me as far as taking care of myself.
Great. Well, finances is something that most people do not put there as self-care, but I'm glad you brought that up. That's a whole that could be a whole conversation for another another
Yes.
episode there. My gosh. But I wanna, you did talk about boundaries. So
Mhm.
maybe, you can, let us know how you set better boundaries. What are some practical things that you do?
Boundaries are a really important thing. And I hear a lot of people always talking about they have trouble with that. And I think boundaries are more for us than the other person, right? It shows people how to treat us. So if you don't feel like doing something, sometimes it's a hard no, right? Sometimes you have to really dig deep and say, why don't you want to do something? Yes, we have obligations, and there's sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. But, if someone's mistreating you or someone says something that you don't like, instead of being passive aggressive or not even speaking up, right? Because if you don't speak up the first time, it'll just get worse, right? So I always believe that you have to kind of get to know yourself, like what makes you happy, what makes you tick. It's your responsibility to manage your triggers, not somebody else's, but it's also your responsibility to set those boundaries, because we show people how to treat us, right? So if you're at work, let's say for instance at work, or if you have clients and they're always calling you after hours, right? And you respond to them in 5 minutes, you're training them. So sometimes you have to say no, like these are my hard hours. I only work 9 to 5. After this, unless it's a hard
Mhm.
emergency, do not reach out to me. And then you have to respect your own boundary and stay in line with that, right? You have to teach them how to treat you. So I think boundaries, a lot of times we look at other people and how they're treating us, and it's really because we don't have a hard boundary. And so I think that's very important to have.
So let me ask you something.
Mhm.
Is it possible to have too many boundaries?
That is a really good question. I think there's a distinction between a boundary and a wall, right? A boundary is like you're teaching someone how to treat you. A wall, I think, if you're keeping people out and people don't want to respond to you, like they're responding to you negatively all the time, I think you have to kind of reassess where you are. But I don't think you can have too many boundaries. You can
So
have a lot of walls.
it could be that's why I bring it up, because it could,
Mhm.
when we talk about boundaries, depending on who you are, you could be listening to it and you could be thinking that that gives you permission to, you actually pointed it out very well. There is a difference between a boundary and a wall. And,
Right.
and a lot of us, could be using that the boundary to, as permission to create the
Right.
wall, but it's two different things. And is there there an example that you can dig into between a boundary and a wall? Like you did say that, you know, closing people off, but that may not be obvious.
Right. So I think a boundary would be somebody, like, let's say you have a client and they respond to you on the weekends, right? And you tell them, I don't really want to, you know, I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, right? And you might have emergency hours, but, you know, if it's after these hours, it will take me longer to respond, right? I think that would be, to me, a boundary. A wall.
Could a wall be like when you tell your mother, don't call me after 9 o'clock or something
I mean,
like
that, you know what, that could be a wall, but that could be a boundary too, right? Because,
it could be a boundary,
that could be a boundary, because what if your mom calls you at all hours of the time over stuff that you're like, hey, I'm busy with other things, right? See, that's a sticky thing. And I think that you have, it's kind of like you have to look at it and assess it, right? Are you keeping people out? Or are you telling people that I go to bed at, you know, at 9 o'clock, I start decompressing, so I don't really want people to interrupt me this time? Or are you saying no every time somebody invites you somewhere because you feel that you don't have the right outfit, right? I think it's really like thinking, like seeing, are you turning people away, or are you showing people how to treat you, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I think it's a fine line. So you bring up a very good point. I think it's a very fine line, whether it's a wall or not. But I think that you have to reassess, like, are you starting to feel like no one's calling you, nobody wants to interact with you? Then it's like, hey, you might have put up a wall.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good point.
You know, or when you ask people to
I
say,
think most people probably feel it too. Like,
yes.
you know, from what perspective that you're, you know, when you're setting up a boundary, you know, from,
yes.
I think, you know, a person would know, like, you know, from what point they're approaching that boundary, I think. Or I think it's important to actually, you know, assess how you're feeling as you're approaching that boundary. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I agree. Like, I think it's like a good one is when all of a sudden you find your friends or people like going places and they didn't invite you, and you ask them, hey, why didn't you let me know? Oh, we didn't think you'd want to go. That's a wall. That's not a boundary.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So here's the next one that I want to really, you know, dig in, because I want to find out what is your favorite book of all time. And it could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. What I want to know is what book in your life has had the most profound impact on you.
My favorite book would be The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I hope I said that correct, but it's The Alchemist. And that is a book that I have read and reread numerous amount of times. And the core message of that book is whatever's in your heart, the universe conspires with you to create it. So it's like there's things in your heart that you want, the universe always, right? It always works with you. So whatever you believe is going to happen, or whatever you want to happen, the universe works with you to conspire to make sure that it happens. So I always love that book because it felt like magic, right? And an alchemist is someone who can bend energy and create things. So it's just a perfect book to me, that to always remind me that whatever I want, the universe wants with me, and the universe is my co-conspirator to work to achieve that goal.
Thank you for that. That's a wonderful book. I did read it myself. So I think you have an offer, right, for our audience.
Yes. So
something you want to let our audience know about? I'm going to give you the floor.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I am hosting a retreat called the Phoenix Rising. It's in Sedona, Arizona. It's for 5 women who are ready to connect to their divine feminine, reconnect to their intuition. They're feeling burnt out, bitchy, and they just want to spend a week with me to heal their old stories and to just reconnect to themselves. And that's going to be October 22nd to the 27th in Sedona. It's all inclusive. It's luxury, because I feel that when you heal, you don't do it in a raggedy environment. You have to do it in luxury. So I'm super excited about it, and I can't wait to work with these 5 women and call them in and just create magic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela, thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation today, and thank you for joining me. And for those of you who are tuning in, thank you for joining us on Diana Prince Lives Next Door. If you want to learn more about Angela and Audaciously Angela, be sure to visit her website. And I have that listed in the description. So until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep seeking out extraordinary stories. I am Angela Acosta, and I am signing off. Today's Diana Prince is Angela Armstrong, a transformational coach who tackles life's unfiltered challenges head on. Angela combines traditional coaching methods with a metaphysical approach, incorporating chakra balancing, energy healing, and spiritual cleansing to guide you through life's turbulence. Angela is a beacon of clarity and support, empowering you to trust your intuition and embrace your true self. Join me in welcoming Angela, your guide to rediscovering your most audacious life.